Hello, and welcome to the first real Asterogues Devlog. Today I'm going to be talking about what I've done in the last couple of months, and in particular, we're going to be looking at some cool new items. Before we get into that, I just want to touch in on an update that I'm happy about, and that is shadows and lighting. Before I was using these circle lights because I thought it gave the game an older feeling and maybe nostalgic feel, but I've changed it to more modern lighting. I've also added a shadow system for moving stuff, so I can define a point and it will draw shadows pointing away from that for enemies and the player. And I really like this new look because I think it gives the scene some depth and helps to break it up with long shadow lines. There's still some ways to go with the visuals and making all the zones feel special, but I really think that this is a good step in the right direction. So, this month I added a bunch of active items, and that includes this wave item that pulls enemies into a line. The active items in Asterogues can offer damage, but I wanted to add a bunch that offer utility as well, to work with the player's builds. This item's going to group enemies up so you can hit them all at the same time with attacks that hurt in a line. To do this, I made the wave animation an A sprite, and then added some code to the bullet that makes it pull enemies along with it. And after that, I set the weapon to fire a bunch of these waves in two lines. And when the waves hit each other, they delete each other. Then I set the waves to spawn with a slight delay, and I'm pretty happy with the result. I also went back and edited old items from the demo that weren't really good yet. The Telegauntlet was one of those items. It teleports you to the mouse location, but it doesn't really feel that impactful. So I added the effect that it attacks enemies with lightning where you appear. Lightning's one of the elemental stats in the game, as well as fire, ice and poison. If you build multiple items with lightning effects, they all get a bit better. So lightning stuns enemies briefly, and also damages them, and then it has a chance to chain to a nearby enemy and do the same. And the more lightning items you get, the more likely this is to happen. I also improved this item called the Pet Rock. I added a few items that interact with obstacles, which means that the item can offer more synergies with your build. I added an item that lets you pick up rocks and obstacles and throw them, dealing a lot of damage. And I also added this item that lets you smash rocks instantly with your melee attack, creating a ring of bullets when you do. And I think this makes the Pet Rock item more appealing because you can do more with the rocks now. I also changed its name because Terraform sounds a lot cooler than Pet Rock, and also it's not a pet, which is something different in the game. And talking of pets, I've added a lot of pets in the last month. Pets are permanent items that follow you around, and they either help in battle or outside of battle. One example is the Starlet that shines brightly and redirects enemy fire to it for a few moments. And there's also the Rover that goes and fetches hearts that are far away and holds on to them until you need them. For all the pets, I'm giving them a more obscure description because I want there to be some parts of the game that the players need to figure out the purpose for instead of just being handed it to them. And if you haven't joined yet, I have a Discord which people are welcome to join and suggest things like pets and items, and I'm going to leave a link to that in the description. Another thing I did was change the visuals of the damage text, so now it's a lot bolder and it changes colour to match if it's an elemental attack. And I think this makes it stand out a lot more, and players are going to be more aware of the amount of different types of damage that they're dealing. So I also added a ton of passive items this month. I made these items that multiply your bullet fire, which I think is pretty cool. These are going to be a fun way to improve your damage output. So the meteor shower makes you fire 2 bullets instead of 1, but they deal half damage. And it's not great early, but it scales really well with crits, which do +2 damage when they activate, as well as on hit effects. The cosmic mirror fires behind you as well as in front, so it's really good if you're in a dangerous position surrounded by enemies. And the trident is probably the most powerful one so far, letting you fire triple shots. And to make these items work with each other, I had to write some code that would allow all the multiplier bullets to call all of the multiplier effects of all the other held items, but not just repeat forever. And the way I did this was I added some modifiers to check for, and I just attached them to the bullet when the bullet starts up. And that way the bullet knows when it's multiplied, which multipliers it's already performed. And when it goes through its list, it only triggers the multipliers that it hasn't performed yet. And that way I can hold all of these multiplying items at the same time. And I don't want to spoil all the items, but I also added a few passive items that change your bullet type, which should switch up the gameplay in a fun way. I have one item that turns your bullets into a flamethrower attack instead, which passes through multiple enemies and burns them. I made this flame effect by making an invisible bullet with a visible trail. I have these cool animated flame trails already, which worked, and then I set the edge vertices to be more than 0, so it's a curve at the end instead of just a flat thing. I think the animated trails could be a cool tutorial if people want to know how to do that, so I'll save that for another video. And on Discord, people wanted to see some new bosses. I'm going to try and save the planet bosses for when you actually play the game, because it will be a nice surprise to look forward to, but I can share a couple of the mini bosses. So I've added a moon boss, which is a really mobile and hard to hit boss during its pattern. Basically the opposite of the star boss, who just stand in the same place the whole time, because after the first world I really want to switch things up, so you're going to see a lot more moving targets and things that aren't bullets attacking you. And then later past that you'll also fight a void dragon who has 2 heads, and they both have their own unique attack patterns. And because of the tiny platforms in this zone, I think this boss is very challenging. And then the one last thing that I've done this month is I've been working on a tavern. I think having quests inside the run is pretty fun, but I didn't like the idea of littering the map with a bunch of quest rooms to meet NPCs individually, especially when you're not going to take the quests. So I'm using the tavern as a place to re-meet these NPCs. There's a bunch of characters in there and they're all going to do different things. They're going to give you free things, they're going to gamble with you, or maybe give you a challenge for you to complete and then meet them later in another tavern. But in order to talk to these NPCs, you first have to buy a drink. And these drinks come with a bunch of positive and negative effects. For instance, the slug gives you really bad accuracy, but improves your melee damage. I think this is going to be a really fun mechanic, because you have to take on this burden for a few rooms that changes your playstyle in exchange for, you know, getting to activate these cool effects in the tavern. And I can randomize the drinks and add new ones, which is going to switch it up every single run, and I think that's going to be awesome, paired with a bunch of randomized characters. And my Discord has suggested some really cool drink ideas that I'm going to implement later and hopefully show in the next video. And then I just want to say this game is pretty far along in development now. Could be finished in the next 3 or 4 months, and with that in mind, I got to do some playtesting. So if you want to be a part of small, spontaneous playtesting, come to the Discord, because I would really love to get people trying out the new characters and items, and also give me ideas for tweaks and new stuff. I'm really appreciative of people who are checking out the game, and yeah, number one way to support it if you do like it is to wishlist it on Steam. And if you have your own comments or things that you want to see next, tell me in a comment, because I would like to implement some of that stuff. And that's all I have, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.